All right, everyone. Good news. Trump's travel ban is going to go before the Supreme Court itself. I guess the Trump admin got tired of dicking around with the Ninth Circuit. See, the thorn in their side has been the Democrats don't have the votes in the House or the Senate to stand in Trump's way. They don't have the will of the people. They have no executive power. They don't really have a lot of states to aid them other than California and a few others. Therefore, they have to resort to begging the Ninth Circuit to constantly issue injunctions on everything Trump wishes to do. The idea is they know they can't win, but they're hoping to slow him down, I think, and then regain the Senate during the midterms or something. That appears to be their strategy. It's not it's like a 1 in 10 chance it succeeds. I still give 90% odds the Republicans continue to hold the Senate and the House after the midterms. At this point, with the DACA shutdown as well, it would have been like 80% confidence. Now it's back up to 90%. It looked like there was a little bit of a slump there. Trump's approval's rising. The DACA thing's going against the Democrats. They've cast themselves off as we're the party of foreigners. We're not the party of the U.S. population. That's not a great place to be. And again, looking at the map of the midterms, it favors the Republicans. It even favors them if they've got a 5-point deficit. And it looks like that deficit has shrunk to 4 points now. So it's not good for the left wing right now. People, I think, are beginning to see the wisdom of what I was predicting, despite the fact that Trump was supposedly, totally horrible, he'll never win, and he wins. Oh, but he'll never be reelected. The midterms will go horribly wrong for the Republicans. Not so sure. Keeping in mind, of course, it's not all rosy for Trump because some of those Republicans consistently stand against his agenda, too. So he's almost a nonpartisan president at this point, pushing a lukewarm populist nativist message while members of his own party grumble about it because they want illegal immigration because they want to pump their friends full of illegal immigrant low-wage employee steroids for corporatist purposes, like the Halliburtons and Walmarts of the world. They want migrant labor because those migrants, they don't expect much in the form of workers' comp, or the ability to unionize or a fair wage. No, they just basically a sleeping bag and a bowl of rice is what they expect. They expect to have enough to send a little bit home to mom and pa or their kids, and that's basically all. So, there's no reason the Democrats or Republicans largely want to stop migrant waves coming in. I predict, though, that the travel ban will be upheld by the Supreme Court, and not because of the construction of the court as leaning slightly to the right. It's essentially a very slightly right-leaning court. It would have oddly been left-leaning if Trump had buckled to pressure with the Gorsuch stuff. If he had buckled to pressure and put like a centrist individual on the Supreme Court, centrist so-called, of course, it would be a center-left court at this point. You've got two justices that are liberals, 2 that are center-left. Then you've got 3 that are center-right and 2 that lean right, that are actually conservative. The additional problem for the Democrats is that the midterms are their last shot in a legal sense to stop Trump from doing anything that they want to stop. If they don't take back the House and the Senate, it's almost certain that Ginsburg keels over before 2020. Trump is going to appoint whoever he wants. He's probably going to give the McCainites a center-right individual to replace someone far left. The court will, for another generation, be a right-leaning court. It's going to take some time, because also a couple of the old right-wingers will probably die, and Trump will replace them with people commensurate with those views. If you look at Gorsuch, I don't agree with him on everything. He's sort of more of a moralist on some issues, but very pro-gun, which is good. That's a good precedent that Trump set. There's a reason he's got groups like the NRA very excited, which is that he's actually more pro-gun than the neocons by a fair clip. That alone gives him some brownie points, by the way, in sort of small-town America, where people are tired of their state capitals meting out bullshit laws that violate the Second Amendment, I think, at this point. Including here in Vermont. Hell, we defeated a liberal Democrat that probably in any other circumstance would have won the election, lost to a rhino neocon because their entire platform was, hey, I'm Michael Bloomberg with a vagina. It didn't work very well here, and this is hippie central. The travel ban is clearly constitutional, though. It is within the president's power to temporarily prevent people from coming in for whatever reason that he happens to deem necessary. Jimmy Carter did it to Iranians. Now, does that mean that Jimmy Carter is an evil, far-right, bigoted, evil, racist Nazi against Muslims? No, it's because there was a national crisis going on at the time. He said, well, I don't really think that I want to take the blame if I don't do this for the U.S. getting bombed or something by some crazy Shiite militia member. So I'm just gonna shut off the travel. I'm gonna shut off this spigot for a while. It's temporary, but it's a travel ban on a nation that's, basically 99% Islamic. Nobody said anything about Carter when he did this, by the way, and he's like the most liberal Democrat you've had in the last half century. Meanwhile, Trump does it. Something that Republican and Democrat alike took for granted as a presidential power in times past. He does it all of a sudden, it's horrible and despicable. Now, a lot of people tried to cast it off early on as a Muslim ban. Then they realized that the Islamic world was bigger than the countries in the Muslim ban, so-called. Then they sort of shut up about it because people gently reminded them that they flunked geography. I did too, and I had a great time of it. I'm like, okay, so there are only 8 nations that have a Muslim majority? Now, at this point, Sweden has a Muslim majority too. He hasn't added them to the travel ban list, and there's good reason, I think, to consider adding parts of Western Europe at this point. I certainly would ban travel to and from Germany. I would declare them a failed state at this point. I'd probably let people in from Iran. I don't see many Iranians doing the Wahhabi thing because they're Shiites. Also, that is one problem I had with it when I looked at the travel ban list. A lot of these countries, it's more about the grand chessboard side in the case of the Shiite world than it is about worrying about, terrorist attacks. Because there's a big difference between how the Wahhabi sect controlled by the Saudis, a Sunni movement, sort of the ISIS Al-Qaeda nexus. Those are the groups that primarily do the suicide thing, the 9/11 thing, things of that nature. The Iranian-controlled militias are more standardized. They're more like military. They're more like guerrilla movements. They're not so much like a hide and take pot shots at a column of troops, up in Tora Bora thing. It's more like, hey, we've got an actual standing army that happens to have a regional presence in various locations thing. It doesn't operate, it seems, quite the same. Oddly enough, I think it's the Shiites that control even some of the Sunni movements in and around Israel, which could be one reason why the Israeli government's antagonistic towards the Iranians and vice versa. I think there's some bad blood in the general region, there's plenty of it to go around. But the travel ban will, I think, be upheld 5-4, or possibly 6-3. It could be unanimous in favor, but I don't think it gets struck down. There is no precedent for a president not being able to temporarily ban people from a country or countries in order to reform the process of tourism and visa on the issuance and things of that nature. It's been done before and it was never legally challenged. This is the first time. The change of precedent would be to say that a president does not have the power to temporarily prevent these things from happening. He's not saying I'm temporarily banning all Islamic immigration. He's not saying I'm temporarily banning all travel to and from the U.S. because reasons. He's saying for a certain number of nations that show significant instability and which, I guess national security advisors deem it's dangerous to allow people in from those nations for fear of terrorist attack. Temporarily, in order to solve the problem of an improper immigration system, we're going to shut off the spigot of movement from these places. It's not unlawful for the president to do that. If it were, we've had several other presidents in recent memory break, that law, including, again, Jimmy Carter. The unloved leftists. The Democrats don't want to take ownership for Jimmy, I think, because he came out and said that the press was being unfair to Trump, actually. I think he feels a little bit kindred because the press crucified Carter, too, remember. They crucified him and thought he was responsible for, the hostage in Iran situation, which he couldn't really do anything about without risking, World War III, so not exactly his fault. Or the oil prices skyrocketing because, the Middle Eastern countries decided to band together in order to raise the prices and throttle the spigot. It wasn't really his fault. The funny part is, Jimmy Carter was one of the better Democratic presidents of recent history. He wasn't as scummy as Bill Clinton. He was less inept than Barack Obama. I really mean that when I say that. He seems like a decent dude, and he's 92 and he still fucking builds houses for his charity. Like, he still does, like, manual labor and stuff. It's insane. I guess that peanut diet really works. Maybe we should... Jimmy Carter should write a cookbook. Be the most popular one ever written. It's like, oh, if you want to be, like, pushing 100 years old, still building houses, trust me, dude, I've got everything that you need. Plenty of exercise and peanut smoothies. It's what Jimmy Carter is into. It's fucking weird shit. That's about all. Peace out.